So in this week's Parsha, at the beginning of the Parsha, we have the very sad incident. Our matriarch, Sarah, passes away. So the Torah discusses the details surrounding her burial. The Torah says that Avraham Avinu came to eulogize and to weep for her. Vayavo Avraham lisbod l'Sarah v'lib koisa. And Avraham came and to eulogize Sarah and to cry for her. On the word of v'lib kosa, and to cry for her, the chaf is small. It's a small chaf. So the Baal Turim says this is to hint to us that Avraham Avinu curtailed his crying. He didn't cry as much. That you would think that he would cry for his wife, and not just for his wife, for the great Sarah. Shalom baksa elo ma'at, that he only cried a little bit. Question is, why did Avraham Avinu lessen his crying? Furthermore, the other commentators asked the following question. They're bothered by the construct of the pasuk. The beginning of the verse tells us that Sarah died. By talking about Sarah, and Sarah died. So we're discussing Sarah the whole time. So it could say, and Avraham Avinu came to eulogize her and to cry for her. And then we would know who he was eulogizing, who was crying. The one that died in the beginning of the pasuk. So it doesn't have to repeat the word Sarah again. We're talking about Sarah. You hear Shmuel? And Sarah died. And then Avraham Avinu came to eulogize her and to cry for her. And we would know who he's eulogizing.
So what should it say instead?
Doesn't have to say her name again twice.
You said her. It says actually
right,
Sarah?
It says so the second time.
It says so.
So it could just say, it should say, and Avraham Avinu came to eulogize her and to cry for her. And we would know who he's talking about. He's talking about the one that we mentioned in the beginning of the verse that died. We wouldn't think he's talking about Lady Gaga. Nobody mentioned anything about her. We're discussing Sarah. So that's one question. Also, if for some reason you feel you want to mention her name a second time, why put her name in the beginning, in the middle of the fact that he eulogized her and he cried for her? If you need to say Sarah a second time, say, and Avraham Avinu eulogized and cried Sarah. But why put Sarah in the middle of eulogize and cry? And the third question for this thing is, the order is strange. Doesn't crying usually come before eulogizing? The order is strange in the verse. It should say, really, and Avraham Avinu came to cry for her and to eulogize her. Why is the eulogy first and then the cry? To answer this question, you have to understand the name Sarah, what it represents, what it comes from. The name Sarah has the root, the shoresh, in the Hebrew word for sar, a prince. Talmud tells us, initially, her name was Sarai. But Hashem changed her name to Sarah when she was 90. Why? Because originally she was a princess only for her own nation, Aram. In the end, she became princess for the entire world. So she became from Sarai to Sarah, meaning a princess over the whole world. So clearly, what happened? Sarah, she went from being a local, respected personality to the one whose impact was felt over the entire world. That's the significance of the name being changed from Sarai to Sarah. Now, there were two Sarahs that needed to be eulogized. There was a public persona, which is what Avraham Avinu was coming to eulogize. There was also the personal loss that Avraham Avinu felt. Sarah, besides being a leader of the Jewish people, was also a wife and a mother. But she was an important person in her own right. So Sarah's death left a void in the world, not just the personal loss that Yitzchak and Avraham Avinu felt by losing a mother, wife, but there was the public persona that was lost. That's why the Torah repeats her name again. Avram Avinu wasn't coming to eulogize his wife mainly. He was coming to articulate the communal loss. He was explaining who Sarah was and what she meant to the entire world. He wanted people to understand what they had lost. Not his personal loss, but the fact that Sarah's death now became a void in the entire world. The public mourning. If it would only be a private mourning, that wouldn't affect the public as much. He wanted to show that that's the proper hesped that you're supposed to give for a especially a public person. You don't focus on your personal loss, you focus on the global loss. In general, that's an important lesson in this story. Funerals are meant for a time for people to reflect on the value of the deceased's accomplishments. But often eulogies become a private affair where people focus on their memories of the deceased. But what happens then is the focus then becomes on not on the loss of the deceased, but rather the loss of the bereaved. The focus of a funeral is what we lost, not the family's private loss, but the loss of the Jewish people, especially by a leader like Sarah. Eulogies should extol the values of the deceased, making it relevant to everybody. If you focus on the wife, the husband, that aspect of it, then it becomes a private affair, not the public affair. Then it becomes about you, about the bereaved. When the focus really is about the deceased, what they meant to the entire people, not just to the entire family. So of course Avram Avinu, that's the answer to the question. Of course Avram Avinu wasn't coming to mourn, to curtail his mourning. He wanted to show that the main hesped and the main focus of what we lost by losing Sarah wasn't the private Sarah, but the public Sarah, the Sarah of the leader of the Jewish people. And that's the proper way when you're supposed to mourn somebody, especially a great person. You're supposed to focus on the public person, not the private person. Of course, there's a time for personal loss. But at the funeral, the main goal of the funeral is to focus on the death of the princess of the world, and not on his own personal loss. I just want to end by saying this is a beautiful, great lesson. Imagine how great Avram Avinu was. He lost his wife, but he was able to focus on the communal loss instead of his own personal loss.